the first point that he tries to make is that everyone's mindset about money is built on different stories and is built on different experiences. For example, if somebody you come across who set up their business on debt, and by taking lots of debt, and their business did well, and they are able to generate massive amounts of wealth, then that person will always recommend, why don't you take debt? Why don't you build businesses on debt? An example of such a person would be Robert Kiyosaki, and another would be James Cordone. Both of them have built their money on real estate, and most of the real estate, whenever you watch their YouTube videos or whenever you come across any of their stuff, is recommended based on high leverage. Buy real estate on high leverage or buy businesses on high leverage, right? Because they might not have faced the challenges that debt brings with it, which is bankruptcy. On the other hand, you come across a businessman whose business fails because of debt. They have this fear in them, or they have this essence within them that debt may be bad and maybe you should build something on equity and maybe build something with personal capital. An example of that would be Warren Buffett, whose father's business did not do as well as he would have liked, and hence, whenever you look at Buffett's funds, he generally does not like leverage. He does not do shorting of funds, or he does not like to buy on margin. He generally just acquires on his own capital. So you can find all of these examples, right? And you would ask the question, what is right and what is wrong? Now, in my opinion, something might be right. In your opinion, something else might be right. So the author likes to introduce by saying that financial outcomes are a soft skill, right? And different people gain this skill with different experiences, and each experience has its own story.
I think he puts it very beautifully at the introduction of the chapter, and he says your personal experiences with money maybe make up 0.0000001% of what's happened in the world, but maybe make up 80% of how you think the world works. He is essentially saying that you are a slave of your experiences. Your thinking, your mindset works on the way your experiences have taught you and the way your experiences work. So he says that people who were born in 1950s and 1970s have a major disparity as to how they look at the stock market, because for the people who were born in the 50s, the stock market during their teens was very flat. It barely gave any returns. There was no real motivation for them to invest in the stock market, whereas the people who were born in the 1970s experienced great returns from the stock market when they were in their teens and their 20s. So the outlook when you speak to someone, this is obviously a generalization, but when you speak to someone in the US who was born in the 1950s or born in 1950 more specifically, they will have a very different outlook. They will probably be very bearish about the stock market. They will be like, probably be very cautious when you're investing in the stock market because it doesn't really give you too much in return. Whereas someone who was born in 1970 would be gung-ho about the stock market and be like, yes, you should definitely invest because it's great and it gives you amazing returns.
Nowadays, this one thing has been really trending for the past couple of years. It's called buy the dip. And this buy the dip mentality is that if a stock falls or if the market falls, then you buy it because it's going to recover, right? And that mentality is essentially built on this timing. A lot of people, maybe they invested their money, a major chunk of their money in March 2020. Or maybe they invested a chunk of their money in early 2019, both times when the market, dipped a little bit. And when they make those amounts of money, then somewhere within their mind, all they're hoping for is a market dip so that they can buy. So they aim for this timing to buy more stocks, and they aim for this timing to buy more market. And then if you ask them an opinion about the market, they'll be like, why don't you wait for a crash? And when the crash happens, then you can put all your cash in it. Otherwise, just hold cash for that time. On the other hand, if somebody buys at the peak of the market, when, they listen to the index fund episode of ours, and they buy at the peak of the market, and then the market dips. Now they're going to be thinking, oh, this person recommended me to buy index funds, and I have lost 6%, 10%, 20% value within 2 months. So maybe the whole concept is incorrect, and maybe I should go for real estate instead. This whole market is rubbish. It is gambling, right? So this is the kind of mentality he talks about. So very nicely put sentences, it is never as good or as bad as it looks. It's always somewhere in the middle, right? And we like to really emphasize this somewhere in the middle thing in our podcast, I think. Numerous times we talk about somewhere in the middle.
I think we today started looking at life very black and white. It's always either a 0 or a 1. However, zeros and ones are only associated with computers. We as humans don't have to deal explicitly with zeros and ones. We can deal with all that lies in between, and that at the end of the day ultimately is life. And we have to embrace that grey. We have to be able to understand that grey and realize that that grey may not always be in our hands.
And maybe have a little compassion towards each other and realize that the other person might not be wrong. Their context might just be different, or their understanding might just be different. And then be able to put our understanding while leaving room for, the other person's understanding within our own. And this is the chapter he calls No One's Crazy, which is very well put, I think, because no one's crazy. Everybody has their own thought process.